Welcome to Biker's Toolbox. I am Ralph, and in this video John and myself will show you how to remove an old tyre, refit both tubed and tubeless tyres, and balance a wheel using the affordable manual tools we sell on our site. To change your own tyres you will need a bead breaker, a static wheel balancer, a 4-way valve tool, a set of tyre levers, a pot of tyre soap, and at least 4 rim protectors and a brush for the tyre soap. The first step is to break the bead. This wheel is off my elderly FJ1200 winter hack with a skinny little front wheel spindle, so we have replaced the standard wheel securing bolt with some M12 threaded rod and some nuts. Once the wheel is secured in place, you adjust the position of the bead breaker blade on the handles that it is about 1/4 of an inch away from the rim and push down the handle. Once a portion of the bead has come away from the rim, you will usually find that the rest follows easily. Once you've broken the bead on both sides of the wheel, it's time to get busy with a cheap paintbrush and a tub of tyre soap. Although we have technically finished with the bead breaker, we have found it makes a useful platform to work on. Brush plenty of tyre paste in and around the rim and the tyre bead. The more slippery the rim is, the easier it will be to get the tyre off. Whilst changing tyres is one of the more physical jobs on a bike, success is the reward of technique rather than brute force. Once the tyre is well lubricated, you fit these plastic rim protectors, which are essential if you don't want to mark your rims. The primary reason I changed my own tyres isn't financial, but to ensure that my rims stay nice. I care about my wheels in a way no one else does. We now start to lever the tyre off the rim. Here John digs the inside of the slightly dished end of the lever underneath the tyre bead. When you're removing a tube tyre, you always start this the opposite side of the wheel to the valve. With a tube tyre, you must be very careful not to pick up the inner tube at this point, or it will pinch the tube and often put a hole in it. Once the lever is in place, you pull it back towards yourself and roll the end of the lever back over the rim protector, bringing the bead over the wheel rim. You then move around the rim with another lever to pull the next bit of bead over in the same way. Getting the second lever in is always slightly harder as the tyre bead is now under tension. It is important to ensure that the bead on the opposite side of the wheel is in the middle or the well of the wheel, which will give you the most movement. Keeping your knee on it will help. As you can see here, the lever on the right side seems disinclined to go in, so rather than fight it, John swaps to the other side, which seems more compliant. The secret, as with most bike fettling jobs, is to keep you calm. Add rim protectors as you need them. I personally exchange the big tyre levers at the edge with little ones that I push under the discs to prevent the bead jumping back on when I'm working on the next bit. But John doesn't. As with many jobs, you will develop the techniques that work for you. Make sure you apply more tyre soap to the other bead and fit one rim protector. Keep the wheel vertical and get your knee on the tyre casing as John is, pushing it down. The lever will start you off, but your knee, followed by your hands, will do most of the job. I don't know about you, but I find trying to get an airline on a straight tyre valve a bloody nightmare, which is why I always replace mine with angled alloy ones whenever possible. We are now stocking them at Biker's Toolbox as we think they're an absolute must, as well as looking much nicer. John now unscrews the old tyre valve holder, which has clearly been in there some years, judging by its reluctance to be removed. Often you will see rubber push-fit versions, which should always be replaced with the tyre. Don't try and save them, Just cut them off with a knife and launch them binwards. Here we're going to show you how to fit a new inner tube in the wheel of a classic Kawasaki using a wonderful new tool that's only just come on the market and is making my life easier already. Firstly, unpack the tube and just blow it up a little bit and then remove the valve. Push the brass end of the tyre valve pulling tool through the valve hole of the wheel and then push your hand inside the tyre to pull it back out. Then screw it into the valve holder part of the inner tube. Pack the tube into the tyre carefully, ensuring that there are no twists or creases. When you have all the inner tube packed in, push the valve bit in and gently pull on the new tool handle and it will gently draw the valve through the hole in the wheel. Only when you have performed this action without this tool will you understand why I rave about it so much. Again, John thoroughly lubricates both the rim and tyre bead with a brush loaded with tyre paste. He then fits all 5 rim protectors, ensuring that they surround the valve, which, with a tube tyre, is where you finish when fitting the tyre. You need to be careful that they are fully engaged with the rim, as everything is quite slippery, and getting them out when they slipped in is a pain. Starting at the point furthest from the valve, you start pushing the bead over the rim. Gently feel the bead over the rim. As you get further round, you need to ensure that the part farthest from the valve sinks deeply into the well of the wheel, making it easier to get the remainder over the rim. As you get more bead over, you'll need to start keeping it in place with your knees. As you get further on, you will find that you have to use the levers to push the tyre on. The most likely mistake to make is to push the lever further than 90 degrees or right angles to the wheel. If you do this, the chances are that you will pinch the inner tube, which will almost always puncture it and consign it to the bin. I did it on my first tube tyre. It's easy to get het up, but the secret is to be methodical and gentle, never rush it. It's a great feeling when the last bit slides over the rim. Now John is methodically checking around the wheel to ensure that at no point has any of the inner tube got trapped under the bead. He then removes the rim protectors, fits the nut on the valve holder and refits the valve. As you can't get angle tyre valves for tubes, John now fits an angle tyre valve adapter to make life easier. We inflate the tyre to 36 psi. Note that you need to get the 2 lines in line on a PCL inflator for an accurate reading. We'll now move back to the tubeless wheel from my scruffy old winter hack. When the tyres are seated on a wheel, they always deposit lumps of rubber on the inside of the sealing part of the wheel. If this isn't cleaned off, and many busy tyre fitters don't bother, there is a good chance that the wheel will, if not immediately, start leaking. You need to vigorously clean it off using a brass wire hand brush. If the surface is corroded badly, you may even need to resort to some emery cloth. Now John fits the lightweight angle tyre valve. It is dead easy to fit. Just be careful not to over tighten the nut, as it is a fine aluminium alloy thread. Check the tyre for direction of wheel rotation and look for the painted dot on the tyre which indicates the lightest part of the tyre, and this must be placed by the valve. Fitting one rim protector is usually sufficient to push the first bead over the rim of the wheel that has had plenty of tyre soap applied to it. Fitting the tubeless tyre is exactly the same as with the tubed tyre, except that you don't have the worry of pinching the tube. Sometimes, more often with wide rears, the tyre bead doesn't ride up onto the sealing part of the rim. In this situation, you can loop a tie-down strap around the tyre and this will force the bead out. Initially, you blow the tyre up without the valve in, as this lets the air in much faster and helps push the bead out onto the rim. Safety dictates that you should not lean over a tyre when blowing it up in case the tyre bursts. The tyre usually pops as the last bit of bead gets up onto the rim. You can overinflate the tyre to get all the bead up if necessary. Once it's all up, remove the airline, refit the valve and reinflate to the correct tyre pressure. The last job is to balance the wheel. Fit the balance spindle by pushing the cones into the wheel bearing centres and tighten them with an Allen key. Lift the wheel up onto the balance frame with the spindle resting on the machine's bearings. Give the wheel a gentle spin, and whatever part of the wheel is at the top when it stops is the lightest part of the wheel. Take a guess at the amount of weight required and use some masking tape to attach some wheel weights to the lightest part of the rim. Turn the wheel so that the weights are at 9 o'clock and let go of the wheel. If the weighted part of the wheel goes down, then you have attached too much weight, and if it goes up, you need to add some. When it doesn't move, you have it right. At this point, remove the temporary weights. If there are a lot, split them in two and fit half to each side of the wheel. You need to clean the portion of the rim carefully and thoroughly degrease it before attaching the self-adhesive weights. You don't want them coming off. Then just double check that the wheel is still in balance. Then refit to the bike and don't forget to scrub them in. I hope that you have found this video interesting and informative. I used to think that tyre changing was beyond the scope of the home mechanic, but it really isn't that hard. The video was shot in my own workshop with my old friend John Hopkins. We both have hobby businesses repairing and building bikes to help finance our own bike and tool habits. Goodbye for now.